Hi there, my name's Rosa Mitchell, and I'm going to be talking through some ideas for Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem, The Lady of Shalott. I'm also going to focus on the assessment objectives for A-level students taking AQA English Literature, just to help anyone prepping for exams. Firstly, these are the assessment objectives that the markers are looking for. AO1 asks for an informed and relevant response, which is accurately written and uses appropriate concepts and terminology. AO2 requires students to analyse ways in which meanings are shaped in literary texts, with a particular focus on the structures of text as a form of shaping. AO3 requires a focus on the context which arise out of the text. So the specific periods being studied. AO4 involves connections across text and sees possible meanings and interpretations arising, not only out of the wider and broader context of the text itself, but also out of the contexts which come from the period of study. AO5 asks for a debate of the interpretations of the text, demonstrating how interpretations are not fixed but are a dynamic process. So throughout this screencast, I've put some notes on each assessment objective, these will sort of show you which ones might apply, just to give you an idea of how they can be covered as well. So just a bit of brief information and background context about Tennyson. He was an English poet, most famous for his poems Ulysses, The Charge of the Light Brigade, and The Lotus Eaters. And he has been named the most popular poet in Victorian England after Wordsworth's death. And whilst talking about the background context, it is also important to consider the society and their beliefs during the Victorian era, as there were new developments in astronomy, biology, geology, and evolution that were circulating across society. These are some ideas that are debated in Tennyson's poetry and also many others during the time. So, The Lady of Shalott was written in 1833, and it is a ballad with no standard structure, but the term itself refers to a poem or a song that tells the story of a person or people. It has 4 numbered sections, with each section, like a story, rising to a climax before the end. This helps capture the reader's interest, inducing or enticing the reader to find out what will happen next. So these ideas about structure certainly would support the criteria for AO2 in the assessment objectives. So the first theme to acknowledge is the idea of perseverance and optimism, which is essentially the glorification of a character who embraces their destiny even if it ends in tragedy. So the Lady of Shalott's perseverance can be found in the line, "She left the web, she left the loom," which shows her perseverance to follow her destiny as she defies conventions of the time by seeing her love Sir Lancelot, even though she knows she will be punished by society and the curse will be upon her. This break from convention is also shown by the suddenness of her actions, the immediate break, and it is heightened by the use of anaphora, which essentially means repetition, and in this case the word she is repeated. Also to form a link with other texts, which fits into the category of AO4. This theme of perseverance and optimism can also be compared to In Memoriam and Ulysses, which are other poems by Tennyson. Another important theme to consider is women's sexuality and their place in the Victorian world, focusing here especially on the idea of imprisonment. A useful quote for this is 4 grey walls and 4 grey towers. The repetition of the phrase 4 grey emphasises the sense of entrapment, and the significance of the colour grey itself emphasises the monotony of the Lady of Shalott's life. This reflects the overall view of Victorian women being trapped in their domestic work spheres. We have to remember that though there are alternative there are also alternative interpretations to this, which is important to consider in the AO5 category. Firstly, this could arguably be preserving her sexuality and innocence by keeping her confined, and therefore protects the image of the traditional Victorian woman. However, an alternative sort of interpretation as well could be the fact that the Lady of Shalott leaves the tower, and this can be read as an act of female empowerment, which subverts the traditional role of Victorian women. So these ideas show how interpretations are dynamic, and therefore this sits within the AO5 band. So as I've gone through this screencast, I've sort of picked up on a few ideas that will hopefully help with the assessment objectives for the AQA A-level syllabus, looking at structure, context, links to other texts and interpretations generally. I hope this gives you an idea of how assessment objectives are present in all of your analyses of poetry, even if you might not actually realise it. Also, a really useful comparison poem to this can be found in my next screencast of the poem Mariana. So take a look, and I hope this will help.